It's the most spooktacular time of year, which means it's the perfect time to break down another ghost tune riff by riff. So in today's video, we take a closer look at Cirice. Well, hey there kids, it's your ghoul buddy, Uncle Ben Eller. In my opinion, there's no such thing as a bad time to listen to Ghost, but there's just something extra fun and spooky about getting into these guys during the month of Halloween. And this song in particular is chock-a-block with Ghost trademarks like their spooky harmonies, eerie chords, and a bitchin' solo. Now it's a little tricky, but it's a treat. As always, downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus lessons, and so much more are available to everybody who supports my channel over on patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today for even just $1 a month and you get access to all the cool shit. Gear-wise today, I have my lovely Dunable Cyclops tuned down one whole step to D standard. It's a lower standard, just like your mom's second husband. And I'm playing this beast through my new toy, the Ampliphonix and Gain Head by Amplified Nation. It's a Dumble-style, handmade, boutique American amp that features 2 channels. On one side, you get crystal clear bassman tones, and on the other side, you get ripping plexi sounds. It's nice. I like things that are nice. But I also like things that are awesome and easy to attain, like this Boss Super Overdrive pedal that I'm boosting it with. Snag yourself a good deal on one, as well as these Jim Dunlop picks and all kinds of other stuff that I use by clicking the affiliate Sweetwater link in the video description below. But that's enough talk. Let's get on with the rock and dig into that clean intro section. The 2 ghouls play the same thing for most of the riff and then split off and do some harmony at the end of it, so we'll check out both endings. To me, this riff has a real Slayer vibe to it. I really like it a lot. And one of the keys to making it sound nice and eerie and dissonant is to use the open strings as much as possible and let them ring out and bleed into each other. So that means over here with your fretting hand, you got to be really careful to arch those fingers up and not let them come into contact with those open strings and kill them out. And by the way, for the duration of this lesson, even though we're tuned down one whole step, I'm still going to be referring to these as the E, A, D, G, B, and E strings. So like I said, both guitars play this one central stem a couple times before they split apart for their harmonies at the end of the riff. And this is probably the most challenging part here because, again, all the open strings and stuff. Let's check it out. At this point is where the 2 guitars diverge off and play their different endings for some really eerie harmonies with each other. Here's guitar 1's part. Meanwhile, guitar 2 is going to jump up the neck here to the 9th position and play this figure. Notice as I play through that, all those open strings were just ringing as long as I could make them. So even when I'm playing up here, you can still hear that low E string ringing out beneath it. After that, turn on that distortion and we're going to move these riffs up here to the 7th position instead. By taking that spooky intro riff and removing all the open string usage and putting them up here on thicker, fatter strings, we're going to get a heavier tone that's a little bit easier to control. Just like the first part that we learned there, both guitars play the same thing up until they reach their endings. really cool things about that riff is the way that those two guitars break off from each other when it gets to that harmony. They're not playing exactly the same thing, you know, a third up or a fifth up or whatever, like Iron Maiden would. They're actually diverging off of each other to create some really interesting sounds. I love how guitar 1 is hitting that B note twice, while guitar 2 is moving its note from E to D sharp. It gives you this really nice suspension and resolve. It kind of sounds like B sus4, letting down to B major, which gives us great resolution whenever the riff returns back to the tonic for the next section. Next up, let's talk about that big old dirty verse riff. Again, this riff features some really cool harmonies going on with the guitars whenever they play the descending lick at the end. Let's check out guitar 1 first. Meanwhile, guitar 2 plays this. So there at the end of the riff, guitar number 1 is playing A, G, and F sharp. Meanwhile, guitar 2 is playing C, B, and B flat. Now, if you combine both those parts on one guitar, you can make it sound pretty cool by doing this. Again, really unusual, because most of the time, like, metal bands pick an interval and stick with it. You know, like how Slayer does stuff in fifths or whatever. I really like what Ghost did with the harmonies here, because you get this minor third interval, followed by a major third, and then another unexpected major third right next to it. Kind of puts you in the mindset of like Megadeth. A lot of Megadeth riffs feature that kind of shape moving back and forth in them. Really spooky sounding because it's not really what we're predicting and it doesn't nicely fit into any common scale. Up next we get the pre-chorus riff of the song, which again features some really cool spooky harmonies. Here's guitar 1. Again, there's some chromaticism happening right there, as well as some chugging on that open low 6th string and accenting that first fret power chord down there too. So be sure to pay close attention to the tab on that one. Now what guitar 2 plays here is pretty different, features some octaves higher up on the neck that create a really unusual and dissonant harmony. Check it out. Now, if you take what both guitars are playing at the end of that riff, this part for guitar 1 and the octaves of guitar 2, and try to kind of simplify it and play it, you know, all in the same guitar, you'll find that they're once again using some major thirds all over this thing. Metal guys think like major thirds are lame because it's the happy sound. But when you use them in unpredictable ways, they can sound really evil. And the way those intervals lay out would be like this. So you'll notice there's this super dissonant tritone, little flat 5 happening there. That was like major third, tritone, major third, walking down like that. Again, really strange sounding, but the sum of those two parts sound so cool together. I know a lot of you guys will say those parts sound funky, and that's probably a little different than some of the tabs and other lessons that you've seen on it, but I have some evidence to back it up with, because this is one of the few Ghost songs that you can actually find the isolated guitar tracks for, and I have that isolated guitar track right here in Logic. I've made a little loop of that section from the original guitar tracks, and I've put it here on loop, and I've also slowed it down so you can hear those intervals more clearly. Check it out. And just for funsies, I made my own 2-guitar recording of it that you can hear, and it sounds exactly like it. Check it out. Isn't that weird? After all that stuff, we get repeats of the verse and pre-chorus riff before we head on into the chorus. This riff is not very hard to play, but be sure to watch carefully for all the open string pull-offs happening. So most of that use our open 5th string there is kind of the root note. It's funny because if you hear the guitar part on its own, you might assume that it's all kind of based around, you know, that kind of tonality. But the cool thing about this riff is while the guitars are just kind of hanging out there on that open 5th string, The bass guitar, and I think the pianos too, are outlining more movement going on beneath this by implying some other different bass notes going on. It kind of makes it sound like there's chord changes happening when, on the guitar side of things at least, there's really not. It's pretty cool. At the end of every turn of the chorus, we have those little dyads that they play here on the 3rd and 4th strings. And once again, that first one that we played kind of has that sound of a sus4 to major 3rd sort of sound, that really nice, you know, churchy resolution that Ghost uses all over their material. This is a real kind of trademark of their sound. One more turn of that chorus and that leads us up to the guitar solo, which is awesome and kind of awkward to play. From what I understand, Tobias Forge writes all these guitar parts himself, and he's not like a mega shredder. You know, he'd be the first one to tell you. He's no Steve Vai or anything like that. So a lot of times whenever you play his solos, they sort of feel like solos that weren't really written by a guy that writes solos, if that makes sense. You'll find a lot of awkward position shifts and weird fingerings and stuff like that because he was hearing a melody before he, you know, started finding scale patterns and stuff like that. So this is definitely one of those solos that I would guess came by him hearing the melody and hearing the licks and stuff first, and then figured out how to play them on guitar as opposed to like a mega shredder that knows 100 million scale patterns and kind of played up and down them until he stumbled into something that he liked. I think Tobias hears this stuff first and then thinks about how to execute it later. Let's hear that solo at step ghoul speed. And again, I'm sure you guys have seen different tabs and positions and playthroughs for that solo right there. Looking at live videos of Ghost kind of becomes a moot point considering how many different players they've had in their lineup over the years. So before I started recording this lesson, I looked for as much live footage as I could to see what positions these guys are playing these licks in. And I found at least 2 different ways to play pretty much every lick in here. So I'm just kind of going by my ears and what sounds and feels like what Tobias would play here on the album. And on the subject of Tobias, even if I had him right here and I asked him how he played that solo, he actually might not know. I was watching an interview with him from a couple of years ago earlier today, and he himself was saying that, you know, he writes the parts, he figures out how to play them, he records them, and then he doesn't play them again for years because he's the singer in the band, right? He doesn't play these parts live or anything like that, so he oftentimes forgets how to play his own riffs and stuff. Nothing wrong with that, but it does make making authoritative transcriptions for these things kind of impossible to do. But hey, the notes sound right, the positions might be different, who knows? Now I want to point out a few of the more difficult aspects of this solo. The tab will guide you through most of it, but let's go over some of the particularly tricky parts. And one lick in there that is a real ear twister that is not at all what I thought it was. So first we're sliding up here into the 12th position. Just some bends and slides, nothing really too fancy. Notice how many fourths are in this solo, right? There's so many all over it. And that's something that he does to follow the chord progressions really, really, really well. That's one thing about Tobias' solos. They're not like the shreddiest things under the sun, but they always follow the chords so well. It makes them super melodic. While you're playing some of these licks that hop around positions like that, it's really easy to make it sound like a choppy mess like that, right? So be sure to stay conscious about trying to make those notes sound as long as possible for a smooth sound, even though you're kind of jumping all over the neck like that. Just a good raunchy, sort of Stairway to Heaven style blues phrase right here. Before we get into this lick, which is one of my favorites. The thing that I want you to notice about that lick is the way that it transitions from 16th notes to 16th note triplets. 1 E and a 2 E and a triplet, 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 triplet. Really cool phrasing that doesn't just sound like your stock, speed metal phrase where you play the same sequence all the way up through a scale. I like that this starts off going in one direction and then kind of breaks away from it and changes the melodic contour as well as the rhythmic feel. Notice when it gets to the triplety phrases, the alternate picking ceases. Those are more like pick a note and do some pull-offs or hammer-ons. Play that phrase for you again here. Now this is followed up by another phrase that ever since I heard this song I thought was another sextuplet phrase. Da-da-da-da-da. It sounds like there's 6 notes and then it lands on this C note right here. Maybe something like this. Now this run is the one in particular that really got me all puzzled up, because it definitely starts right here on the 9th fret on the B note and it walks up 6 notes and then we hear it hit the downbeat on this C note right here. But there's kind of some problems there, because if you're walking up the scale that way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'd still have 7, 8 notes to go before you hit this note. So this was kind of confusing to me right away. I was like, maybe he's playing this somewhere up higher in the scale, but he's not. He's definitely starting it right here and ending up here within 6 notes time. Now, whenever I listened to this on the record years ago, I would have sworn it was just a straight up, 6 notes up the scale, landing right there on the downbeat. But as we listen to the isolated guitar tracks here, that's going to tell a little bit of a different story, because the point A to point B, or point B to point C as it were right here, is a little weirder than that, and some of that is because of the doubling that's going on in this guitar solo. Now, doubling solos is nothing new. This is one of those things that goes way back to the days of Randy Rhoads and Ozzy, where Randy would double, triple, or even quadruple track his solos just for some extra fatness and stuff like that. But sometimes whenever you double a solo, you end up with some slight discrepancies where maybe you nailed this note on the first take, but you accidentally grabbed another note on the second take, but they still kind of gel well and sound cool. It makes it sort of impossible to transcribe for one guitar, and it makes, YouTube guys like myself pull our hair out in frustration trying to figure out exactly what to show you guys. But I've got the isolated track pulled up right here, and I'm going to show you guys how those notes stray away from each other, and he kind of skips a few notes in the solo here too. Let's scope it out. Okay, so here's the run at full steam. Let's hear it again. Again, seems pretty unspectacular. It starts on a note, walks up 6 notes, ends on that high note. But listen to it slowed down. And you're going to hear the note skipping that's happening in the scale right here, as well as the discrepancy in the double. Scope this out. Listen again really close. And what I want you to listen for here is when they get to these 2 notes. This is where you're really going to hear the 2 guitars play different things, I think accidentally. Right? Let's hear it one more time. What I think is happening right here is he had one take where he went, and then on the next take that he did, maybe his hand got a little ahead of itself, because you're going to have to shift up a fret to get to that note that he's landing on. So what I think happened, and while we're hearing those dissonant, out of tune notes, is it sounds like his hand was probably already in progress of moving up a fret when he played the 2 notes that happened here on the 3rd string. So there for just a split second, you get this extreme dissonance going on between those notes. You don't notice it, it goes by so fast at record speed, but it's pretty interesting to hear that on its own. Now I'm alternate picking my way through this. It sounds like that's what's happening on the record, some palm muting and some alternate picking, because it sounds punchy, but if it was just legato or something like that, I wouldn't be all that surprised. But here's what I'm hearing out of that. It sounds like it's walking up 3 notes on the 4th string, and then on the 3rd string, it sounds like there's just 2 notes happening right here before we end up on the B string with its 2 notes. So you have a triplet on 1 string, a triplet split across 2 strings, triplet, 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 and then ending on that final note for resolution. Again, I really think it was just a happy accident, but it does sound cool that way. Be sure with all those bends in that section right there that you just hear them go up, then go to the next note. You don't want to hear this. Like the note going up, then returning to pitch before you ditch it and go on to the next note in the solo. Be sure that you just hear those bends go up, then you're going to ditch it and go to the next string. One of the ways that I like to ditch bends at the top like that is to actually touch them over here with my picking hand. So you'll notice there that as I bent the high E string up, I was ready to ditch it, so I touched it here with my middle finger and then jumped over here to the second string. So I bend it, touch it, and ditch it. I think that same story is how my parents ended up getting divorced. Cool little Phrygian dominant phrase there at the end. I actually started transcribing that keyboard solo because it's really cool and would lend itself to like legato playing to keep it sounding really smooth, so lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs. If that's something you guys are interested in, let me know in the comments and I'll break that down on another lesson video sometime because it is really cool and a big challenge. It's always fun transcribing stuff for other instruments and putting them on guitar. So let me know if you want to see it in the future. Yeah, after that, it's all sweet repeats of that chorus until the very end of the song. And when it goes to those dyads that we played earlier, it's gonna play this extra little thing at the end. Check this out. So I did the same move, just moved down a whole step. Then you're gonna play that same major dyad again, move it down a whole step, and then end with your low E power chord. So it sounds like this. And that is every bit of Ghoultar in Cirice by Ghost. I love breaking down their tunes and learning about all their weird harmonies and stuff like that. So if there's some other Ghost songs you guys would like to see featured here on the channel, be sure to let me know in the comments section because I would love another excuse to break down more of their tunes. Thanks again so much for watching. If you want to say thanks, consider supporting my channel over on patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Even for just $1 a month, you get access to tons of bonus lessons, backing tracks, downloadable tabs, all the cool stuff, and an awesome community of folks. Actually, now that I think about it, the fact that I'm doing this lesson is because of my lovely and loyal patrons, because I put up a post on there a week or two ago saying I wanted to do a Ghost song, for the Halloween season, and a lot of people jumped on there and said to do Cirice. So this video you're watching is a result of those awesome people over on Patreon. You can be one of those people too. Get on it, do it now, start reaping the benefits. All the cool kids are doing it, and you're cool. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for new content coming at you every single week, and ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. Well guys, it's been fun as always, but it's dinner time, so I'm gonna go stuff my face. As for you guys, I recommend getting away from the computer, picking up the guitar, and working on some Ghost songs. Less clicking, more picking.